Very good. Jaime, the floor is yours, and you will talk about, I have that here somewhere. Yes, of course, the Meatloaf and FujiNet for C64, please.
Sure. Okay. Hi, my name is Jaime. I am from the US, and this is a project I've been working on for a while. It's called Meatloaf, and it is a multi-device emulator for the Commodore 64. I'm also working with the FujiNet project to bring the Commodore functionality to their device. I actually started on Meatloaf about 6 or 8 months before I discovered FujiNet, and when they had posted a message in a Commodore Facebook group about wanting to port their device over to Commodore, I checked everything out and realized that I was already working on that. So I kind of joined forces with them to help make their device better and bring the Commodore 64 specific functionality to their device as well, and been helping to enhance that project. Let me switch over to my slides here. Let's see. So again, the Meatloaf device it's a multi-device emulator. It's very network centric as far as its functionality. It can take just about any file URL and convert it into an IEC data stream. That's the goal of this. Everything within Meatloaf is treated as a stream. So you give it a URL to a file, whether it's on your local flash file system or SD card, or if it's out on a web server somewhere, embedded in embedded in an archive, which also contains a container, and it just figures everything out. You give it the URL and it just returns a stream that you can do whatever you want with it. In this case, we're feeding it in through the IEC serial port, and the 64 just thinks it's talking to a floppy drive. Let's see here. I'm going to go to the next slide. I'll go through that. Oh, yeah, this slide I was talking about, I was telling you about FujiNet's, and the differences between the two projects. Again, I had started things and then discovered what they were working on and wanting to port it over to the Commodore 64. So I joined in and offered to take care of that part. I am maintaining Meatloaf as a separate project just because I have some things in mind for it that are beyond the scope of what FujiNet is planning. And they've also gone multi-platform, whereas I'm planning to keep Meatloaf kind of Commodore specific. We are sharing code where it makes sense, and I think there's plenty of room for both projects. So let's see, next slide. How Meatloaf is different than SD to IEC and Pi 1541 and some of the other devices that are out there. This is a question that I get a lot. What I'm trying to communicate is that it is not well, in relation to SD to IEC, Meatloaf actually emulates like a stack of 1541 drives. It's not just a single device. It can respond to any device ID on the IEC bus from 4 to 30, which opens it up to doing all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, you know, you can have multiple media on each device ID. So theoretically, we could have a virtual stack of 5,000 1541 drives. I mean, you can never connect that many drives to a single system, of course, but you know, virtually that is possible with what we're doing here. We also plan to have virtual printers. Thanks to FujiNet, they've already built a bunch of virtual printer drivers for emulating a lot of different printers with their fonts, and it spits out a PDF file right onto the SD card, so you can just pull it over your network connection. Meatloaf is not planned to be a cycle exact 1541. We are emulating a lot of the functionality of the 1541, but that was not one of the goals. I am doing some things, or I have some ideas that will make it more compatible so that demos and software that is expecting certain features of the 1541 to work properly. So I do have some ideas that could possibly make things more compatible for those programs. Let's see. Okay, so as far as loading data using the Meatloaf device, it does connect to the IEC serial port just like a standard floppy drive, 1541 floppy drive. So you can load data directly from the flash memory that's in the device. It also does have SD card support, so you can have a bunch of data stored on an SD card. So just like you would a SD to IEC or Pi 1541. We have also built a or added a file format. It's just a .url file format, because you're limited on the amount of space that you have on the internal flash. Some of these modules, these ESP modules, only have about 4 megs of flash memory. And if you want to access a lot of stuff, or at least have quick references to a lot of files, we can do this through these little URL files. So instead of having to type out a big long URL, you can save it into a file with a .url extension, and the Meatloaf device will read that file and then redirect to the URL that's in the file on the system and go out over the internet to grab that data. The Meatloaf also supports loading directly from a URL using just a standard load command. And I'll demonstrate this in just a few moments after we get through the slides here. Actually, I can show you that. I can switch over to that and show you that. Let's do that right now. So I'm going to switch over to my HDMI view. This is a live feed directly from my 64 that's sitting right here. I'm going to reset. Let's just reset. And I'm going to type in a URL. C64. And we're going to load game of the day. This going to come directly off of server out on the net. So HTTP, make sure I got everything typed correctly. CC. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. Actually, I'm going to switch the view so you can see on this left-hand side, that is a monitor view, monitoring the serial output from the device. Sorry. Monitoring the serial output from the device so that we can see it communicating with the server. So I'm going to hit return. There we go. It's establishing the HTTP connection, and it is streaming that data directly from a server on the internet into the memory of the 64. Of course, it is standard IEC serial speeds, so it is loading slow. I do have plans to support fast loaders and Jiffy DOS, as well as parallel transfer through user port, and that's going to require an extra connection from the device, so it'll connect to the user port and to the IEC serial port, but it'll give us much faster loading times. So there we go. We've got that loaded, and let's just run and see what our game of the day is from the server. There we go. Loaded up right over the internet. I'm going to reset that. And I want to show you, let's switch back to the slide. So that was the direct URL loading. The next way to load files from a URL is I've set up some scripts on the server to support a shortcode system so that you can load things without having to type a big long URL. Possibly a URL that might include special characters that you might not necessarily be able to type on the Commodore 64 keyboard itself. So I've created this script to solve that problem. Each shortcode starts with ML:, which is short for Meatloaf, and it hits the meatloaf.cc server, does a lookup on that code, and then returns a URL, which the Meatloaf device then directly connects to that server out on the internet and loads the program. So let me show you that real quick. Let's see. I'm going to go back to the VS Code Zoom mode here, and I have a shortcode set up for Mind is Born, the demo. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. It's a little 256 byte demo. It's really awesome. Let's see, let's load that. Establishes HTTP connection. It's the URL, loads the data, and we are ready to run. There it is. I don't know if you guys can hear the sound or not. But quick little way to load stuff. I've also got some scripts set up on this server using the shortcodes that allow you to load, say, a random game. And the great thing about this is the shortcodes can be configured to hit any other server, and I'm gonna be adding scripts at the meatloaf.cc website so that people can register their own shortcodes and redirect. They can use the shortcodes to use the Meatloaf device to redirect to their server and load whatever they're sharing for everyone out on the internet. I'm gonna show this other script real quick, or this other shortcode. Code game star. And what this one does is it hits a script. Oops, I did not put the ML in there. L. There we go. What this one does is it hits the script on the server, selects a random PRG file from a directory on the server, and then sends that URL back to Meatloaf to load directly. Let's see what it loads a random game every time, so you never know what you're going to get with this script. It's just a demo to show some of the kinds of things that we can do with this network functionality. That is loading. Of course, it will be nicer once I get some fast loaders and stuff working a little bit better. Getting close, 70%. Almost there. It's kind of cool. I like watching this data stream. It's actually showing you the address in memory where the data is being stored in the 64 as it's loading. This, of course, is just a development feature while I'm debugging and testing and whatnot. So let's see what it loaded up. Run. Yeah. So what is this? Can't read that. So anyway, it loaded a random game from the server. All right, I want to back to the slides. There's one more way that we can load data into the system using Meatloaf. Again, this also solves the problem of having to type out a long URL. And what I did is I wrote a browser add-on. It's called Send a Meatloaf. It's available for Firefox, Chrome, Opera, Safari, Microsoft Edge. I ported it to all the different browsers and got it into all of the different add-on web stores. So what you do, I'm going to switch over to the browser mode. So the idea is, say you're out on the internet and you are browsing for CSDB. I already had it on the demo that I was going to load here. But say you're out browsing the web and you find a link to a PRG file. Right now it's only supporting PRG files, but we're very, very close to having it working with D64 images and D81, all of the different media file formats. You'll be able to mount them over HTTP and load them like you had just popped the disk right in the system. But at the moment, it is just loading PRG files. So say you're browsing CSDB, you want to load up something that you see with your Meatloaf device directly on your Commodore 64. I'm going to select the Love Cats demo because it's kind of cool. And you just scroll up, you find the image or the PRG file. Right now, PRG file. I'm going to right click on this. And I know this is hard to see, but you just select Send to Meatloaf. I click that, and then it pops open. Oh, it popped up on my other screen. Let me move this over here. It pops open a little window that tells you that the URL is queued up and gives you the command to use on your 64 to load the program. So let's switch our view back to VS Code here. We're going to type in that command. Star. And hit enter. It's going to establish that, or it's going to grab that URL from the server and then go out to CSDB and download that directly. And we'll be running it. It makes it really easy for loading anything that you find out on the web, not just on CSDB, of course, but any link that you can find out on the internet. This it also works with just plain text. So if the text is on the screen in your browser and it's not a clickable link, you can highlight the text, right click, and select Send the Meatloaf, and it will queue it up at meatloaf.cc to be proxied to your Meatloaf device to be loaded up. Also, I am planning to have it set, and I haven't tested this yet, but being able to select text off a page, if there's a basic program listing, you'll be able to highlight that text, right click on it, and send that to Meatloaf as well. And it'll tokenize it and have it ready to load right into your device. So you don't have to retype some of these old programs for magazines and whatnot if they're available in a text format out on the web. So okay, that loaded up. Let's run. And switch to our HDMI only mode. And there you go. We have our demo up and running. So, all right, let's reset that. And go back to our slides here. Next slide. Okay, so those are all the different ways that you can load different things using the Meatloaf device. The URLs to target the file, it can go through multiple protocols, different file formats or container files, and the beauty of this code is that you don't have to do anything special. You just feed it a URL, and it gives the device back a stream that it can feed to the Commodore 64. I have to thank one of the guys working on the project. I know I'm gonna mess his name up because it's Polish and I don't I'm trying to pronounce it correctly, but I believe it's Jaime is his name. He is responsible for creating the classes for doing all of this magic with the full URL and just giving us back a nice stream that we can work with. So as you can see, I know this is probably a little small on your side, but you just feed it the URL. It can have a zip file in the URL, and then you can target a D64 inside of that, and then your file inside of the D64 container that you're actually trying to load. And you just feed that through a load command in BASIC, and it does all the magic and returns it to you. So some pretty cool stuff. I mean, I'm loving working on this project, making this stuff happen. We are planning to support just about every file media format that has ever been created for the 64. Right now, we're of course supporting D64, D71, D80, 81, and 82, T64, T-cart files. I'm treating them just like a disk file, so you can mount it and do a directory listing and load any of the files out of the TCRT file. I have several others that aren't listed here that are supported. Some non-standard formats, the D8B backbit file format, and a few others. But the plan is to be able to load anything that was ever created for the system by plugging in this one device and just having access to everything out on the internet, you know. Another feature of the device is that it can translate PETSCII to and from UTF-8 on the fly. So say you're loading HTML directly, it can detect that and convert it to PETSCII so it looks, you know, somewhat better on the 64 screen. Same thing with text files. When you load and save text files, it'll trans to the flash storage or eventually to HTTP and other protocols. It will do that UTF-8 translation on the fly, so you don't have to worry about it. Let's see, the next slide. Oh, upcoming features. I talked about this a little bit. It's going to support fast loaders. It's going to support Jiffy DOS. I've already been working on parallel loader support through the user port to support speed DOF, and DOS, and others. I am planning to also support the WIC64 application. It has its own API for programming or for accessing the device, and with the parallel interface, there's no reason why we can't support those applications as well. I've been in contact with Kiwi, and I'm also going to take some of the Meatloaf code and add that to the WIC64 project. I'm going to work with him to, and that will give the WIC64 project the ability to work with D64 files and all the different file formats as well. So I will share some of that code with the WIC64 project as well. He's already sent me the latest code that he's been working on, and I've actually taken it and broken it down into all of the individual components so that instead of being one big Arduino file with all the code in there, it's a little bit easier to get around in it. And I'm hoping that will help with the project as well. So let's see. I think that is the last of my slides, and I don't have anything else to demo right now, but looking forward to getting some of these other features completed. And also the reason for presenting this is to get others interested that might be able to help with the project. It's all open source, all the hardware, software, everything. Right now, if you want to build a Meatloaf device, you just need an ESP32 module, a little bit of wire, and a DIN6 plug to build the very bare minimum version of the hardware. So it's really easy to put together, about $10 or so worth of parts, and using the development firmware right now, you can get up and going and start playing with some of these features and exploring the possibilities of what it can do. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of things that I have not thought of that others will, that this thing will be able to make happen for us. So I think that is about it. If anyone has any questions.
Thanks very much. It's really, really nice. I see in the comments everybody saying, yes, awesome, really nice. I really like this, the fact that you have this, you said it's a debug functionality, but that you can monitor what is currently ongoing, the exchange of data. At least you know that your connection is on, right?
Yes. Yeah. I have added an LED library to the code so that we could, I want to put some LEDs across the device so that at least 5 LEDs, those will be the 5 pixels in the Meatloaf icon, and we'll load them up for 20% of the loading of the file, especially if you're loading a big file. But I suspect also that whenever we get the fast loader support working and the parallel loader support working, the wait time's not going to be as significant as as it is now. So.
Yeah. Good. I don't know if there are questions. I have one, by the way. So you mentioned the different protocols. You showed as well that it's translating from UTF-8 to PETSCII. What if you like to open a BBS? Then you need a terminal. Will that open a terminal by itself, or is there a shortcut possible is it possible to create a kind of shortcut so that if I telnet into something, it will first load a terminal and then start loading the content from there, or is that absolutely nothing to?
I would have to explore that. I would imagine you would load a terminal first before you start connecting to a BBS. And I was also envisioning, say, a driver for making it work with, say, CCGMS or some of the other terminal programs that are out there, because initially I did want it to talk serially through the user port. And I do have some ideas for the circuit design to switch it from parallel mode to serial mode so that it could be used like a standard Commodore modem. So that is a possibility if I can work out the circuitry to make it do that. But loading over parallel and having a parallel driver that works with CCGMS would be ideal, because then you could, it'd be a lot faster. You could simulate any speed you want, really.
The question popped up to my mind when you showed this this extension that you have for the browser, because sometimes you have like these inventories of BBS, so it would be nice if you're there browsing and then you say, yes, this one I would like to open.
Yeah, and have it kind of chain load a terminal program. That is possible. I was looking at creating chain loaders for SID files and qual files and whatnot, so that if you go to load a .SID, it first loads a player and then chain loads the SID into memory along with it, and then you could load it directly without having to load a player first. So that could be a possibility for terminals as well. I like that idea.
Nice. Thanks.
I was curious, Jamie, with retrieving the files from a HTTP address. I was curious, did you have like an option to get a directory listing? Like a load $,8,1 sort of equivalent.
Actually, I can show you. Let's try that. I think I have that working with I showed you the loading the random game. Let's see. Let's switch back to the HDMI mode. There we go. And let's do load. I'm using shortcuts now. Load now. That one. I actually wrote some PHP scripts that will return a standard PRG file to a Commodore 64 using directory listing from a server, and that's what I'm using here. So load. And here we go. Oh,
Marcel.
game $. That should have worked. So, let me reset the device.
¿Me escuchas vos o me escuchan todos?
Loading. Kind of loaded something there. I have to check this script because what's this? There we go. That loaded from the server.
Okay, cool. All right, nice.
But it loaded the default folder. So let's see. Yeah, it did load from the server. If you check my GitHub, I've got some scripts there, some PHP script. Well, not it's gist. So gist.github.com/idolpx, and I've got a gist there for it's a PHP script. You point it to a directory on your web server, and it will return an index.prg file that can be loaded directly into Meatloaf, and it gives you a directory listing of what's in that folder on the server.
Cool, very nice. Cheers.
Yeah. Let's see. There's my webcam again. Okay.
Really nice. Thank you. I don't know if there are any other questions. Wilfried?
Yes, thank you for the great presentation. So what I understood, basically you have a native C64 because everything, the added intelligence is basically on the device that's hooked up to the ISC port.
Yes.
And for your presentation, I think the image was quite crisp, so probably you used an emulator, right? So my question would be, is it possible to connect an emulator to the Meatloaf as well?
I would like to add emulator support, but what you were seeing there was a video capture from an actual Commodore 64. Everything that I presented today was working directly on a real Commodore 64. I could actually let me show you. I'm working off of my dining room table right now. Is the 64 right there? It is a real 64 that I was demoing.
We have nice video capture.
It's the I'm using the Shadowcast device and a little it's an AV to HDMI converter. So I connect the 64 to the AV to HDMI converter, and then I plug the Shadowcast into that, and then I'm doing the capture with OBS on my MacBook.
Nice stuff, yeah. But for example, for cross development, of course, emulator support would be nice.
Yes, yes, and I have been looking at adding a virtual Meatloaf device in Vice. I see that there is a little bit of support for Wix64, and I know Kernel 64 supports Wix64, a Wix64 virtual device. I don't know enough about how the virtual devices work, but I agree. It would be awesome to have it there as well.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, question. Yeah. I got a question. Will it support ANSI terminal?
That would support ANSI terminal?
Like old age, like almost like 90s BBS, ANSI, ANSI, ANSI.
ANSI. Would this support it?
No, what would it support it?
If someone wants to write the filter for doing the translation, it should, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
But yeah, the way we've set the system up, we can have filters for any stream. So again, everything within Meatloaf is a stream. It opens the URL and returns a stream, and then you can feed that stream into another filter that translates it. That's how we're doing the Petsky to UTF-8 translation.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. I see still one question from Daniel.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering, like games that use levels or something like that, which are loaded, are currently not supported, right? But wouldn't it be possible to, let's say, define some kind of a URL pattern or something like that that says that everything from now on shall be loaded from the same address?
Yes, it does. It does set a base address whenever you load from a URL. Mm-hmm. So any file loaded next would be pulled from that address.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so you could do a load, and it does support just the standard CD, commands. So actually, let me show you. It's not working over HTTP at the moment. I have to finish that support, but let me show you. Say right here, let's browse the flash memory. Say load. I'm going to set it back to root. You can do CD commands through a load command, and it does the change directory and then sends you back a directory listing. So load
Okay.
CD / that sends us back to root, and we list our directory and say we want to go into the SD card. You can type load SD. It's going to detect that as a directory and automatically change directory rather than trying to load it as a file. So we get that, and now we're in our SD card directory. Again, it also works with. Let me do this. I'm going to load. We're going to load from root the file browser 64, FP64. It's loading. And time. Yeah, we're already. I enhanced the directory listing. I don't know if you noticed that at the top. It shows you what path you're in. It'll also show you what URL you're connected to and what your current URL is, what your path is on that URL, and if an image or archive is mounted, it shows that at the directory at the top of your directory listing. Right now, it's just showing the path, which is SD because we're in the SD card. I'm going to go down, and there's a .bit folder here. This is kind of cool. Let me switch to the VS Code view so you can see the data streaming in as I browse through here. I'm going to go down to, let's go down to view. You see our directory streaming in. And then let's do Ultima 3, D81 file. It's going to load the directory listing first. There we go. You see our path there, /SD/BB/U. We've got our image mounted, showing the D81. And then below that, these are all the files that are actually in that D81 image. I'm going to hit enter here, and it's going to start streaming the data in and loading it from the Meatloaf device. And we're loading Ultima 3. It's kind of cool. I love watching this data stream. The first time I got this working, it was really exciting. I've enhanced it some. It really doesn't add any functionality other than just being able to visualize what's happening. There we go. And we're loading Ultima 3. And I've got some issues that we're working out with the HTTP protocol. We can get a directory listing from an image on a server right now, but for some reason I kind of know what's going on. It's jumping around inside of a disk image on the server. We're using range headers, HTTP range headers, to jump around inside that disk image to get at the data. And there's something that I'm not doing quite right, so it's really slow, and then it just fails. But I'm very close to having that completed, and then we'll be able to load these images right from a web server. Actual D64, D81 images. We'll be able to mount them right from a URL and access them just as if they were popped into a 1541 or 1581 drive directly connected to the system. There we go. Loading all the
Thanks very
files.
much.
This is almost loaded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just Jamie, we will not take any more questions. I guess if people have more questions, they can put it in the chat, because time is running. We have other people following as well. Thanks a lot. I will stop the recording now.
All right. Thank you, guys.